I've beaten Elden Ring many times, and I've used all kinds of builds imaginable, but one thing I've never tried is beating Elden Ring by not attacking whatsoever. I want to see just how far I can push my limits in this game, having a completely different experience than a normal playthrough, and of course my goal was to see if I could actually beat the game using summons only. So let me show you my experience with leading my army of spirits through the lands between. So we'll be starting with the Prophet class for this run, which is the obvious choice because it's the class with the highest faith stat at the start. The main way of keeping our army alive is by us providing healing, and all healing incantations utilise the faith stat. And of course we needed a general to lead the army. Recognise this guy?
King Ragnar.
And upon entering the lands between, we died to the first boss, entered Limgrave and went to speak to Melina to get Torrent and start our journey. The first step in this run was to actually make sure we could use the summons, so we went to the Church of Ella and spoke with Ranni, who gave us the Spirit Calling Bell along with our first summon. It was then time to expand our army even further and pick up the Jellyfish Spirit from Modrica. This would give us the option of dealing damage over time, as the jellyfish can inflict poison on the enemies, and this could come in handy a bit later on. Now that we had these two spirits, they could help us to gain the spirit that we were hoping to carry us through the early game, Banished Knight Engvall. To get this spirit, we needed to kill the Warden boss, but it's fair to say the wolves didn't last long first try. We then tried the jellyfish, and the poison over time effect worked a whole lot better, but unfortunately we couldn't quite finish the job. So it was time for some early upgrades. For some ED runes, we cheesed the Knight's Cavalry, increased our stats, and headed back. Welcome Banished Knight Engvall. And now that we had our first strong Spirit Ash, it was time for us to take on Margit. Luckily for this fight, we were given an additional summon, Rogia, who does a surprising amount of damage. I did toy with the idea of not summoning NPCs in this run due to them increasing the boss's health bar, but thought it would be more exciting with more of an actual army in the arena. Now I've walked through this boss fight on many playthroughs, but I've never played it like this, and it was actually a lot more enjoyable than I thought. It's all about finding the right openings where you can and get a heal in and there. And all about your positioning, and you never know what the summon is honestly going to do. But when you're getting close to heal and the summon just steps outside of range, it can be heartbreaking. But Margit proved a lot harder than I thought, and I know I'd be in for a tough rest of the run here. After a few hours of being absolutely brutalized, it was time for some upgrades. We picked up the 2-finger heirloom for some additional faith stats. We picked up the Faith Knot tier for extra faith points to boost our healing even further. And I then decided I wanted an attack and defense boost. So naturally I wanted Golden Vow. So I went to get the Ash of War from the knight on horseback. But after trying many different methods, I had no way of killing him without actually dealing damage. Just when I was going to give up on this idea, I gave the rejection incantation a try to see if it could knock him off. And lo and behold, and our final upgrade was to pick up the Blessings Boon Incantation, which will heal allies continuously for 8 HP for 90 seconds. And with those upgrades, it was then time to head back to Margit. And honestly, this fight was just as hard as it was before. But with a bit of patience and a whole lot of healing, we eventually got him. It was then time for Godrick, but I decided it would be a bit boring just to use the same spirit over and over again. So I picked up the Rotten Dog Spirit summon to give us an additional damage over time option. The dog deals Scarlet Rot damage, which is absolutely devastating to most enemies, so it would defo come in handy a little later on. On to Godrick, and for this we also summoned the NPC Nephili. And the first attempt started off absolutely terribly, with the dog getting straight up deleted after 5 seconds. But he did manage to proc Scarlet Rot though, and was the only reason we were using him. But with so much of the fight left, surely it wouldn't kill him. Would it? My only chance was to keep Nephili going as long as possible, and with the help of Golden Vow, we actually got Godrick the first time around, and I started to feel a whole lot more confident about this run. We then picked up Radagon's Sword Seal for some extra stats, and decided we need an additional archer unit in this army. So we picked up Latenna, but she didn't exactly work out right away. And with that we activated the Grand Lift of Dectus, and it was onwards towards Leyndell. This granted us the opportunity to upgrade our healing spell, so we acquired Great Heal, which should heal significantly more than the regular heal. And next on my list was actually getting into Leyndell, as I had a very special summon that I wanted to unlock in there. So to do that, I had to get past the Tree Sentinel, and on my first attempt, we used our trusty Banished Knight once again. But he just simply wasn't doing enough damage anymore, so it just wasn't viable. My next choice was the Rotten Dog, just to try and outlast him. So out came the Rotten Dog once again, and we were also able to summon Targoth the NPC here, which is just so helpful. So all we had to do was proc Scarlet Rot and heal Targoth as much as we can. Scarlet Rot is just that strong. And just like that, we were on to wait. We have to kill another demigod. Off to Radahn we went, and for this one we could summon a real army. This fight took me a good few tries, and after finally getting his health bar extremely low, I searched for one more summon sign to finish the job. Only, there were no more summon signs to activate. Turns out you can actually run out of summon signs in this fight, which just sucked so much dick. So I knew what I had to do. I had to go in, look for even more opportunities to buff the summons with Golden Vow and heal them even more. One swing from Radahn would just take me out straight away, so I had to keep my distance during this fight. Eventually, after a long drawn out fight, we did it, and we are now able to head into Leyndell. The summon I wanted in Leyndell is the Dung Eater, an absolute menace of a summon who deals all kinds of damage, but most of all, I wanted that bleed build up which he offers, along with being one of the tankiest summons out there. So we started Ranni's questline, spoke with Severus Snape, and after a million more steps, we finally got our hands on our next summon. But in case you're wondering how I managed to kill the Dung Eater invader without summons and killing him, check this out. Maybe he isn't the smartest one, but he can take a hit, which is all we care about. Whilst in Leyndell, we also picked up the Deathbed Dress, which gives us an additional 2% HP passively to our allies. It isn't much, but every little helps as bosses are about to get a whole lot harder from here. We then heard about a series of summons who were looking for recruitment into our growing army. So we headed into Nokron and picked up the Great Shield Soldiers. They don't deal a ton of damage, but easily the tankiest summons in the game and can withstand a whole hell of a lot of damage. We then took on the Mimic, who was no challenge at all for our new Dung Eater, before picking up our own Mimic tier Spirit. With these new recruits, it was time to take on Godfrey the Golden. Now the Dung Eater wouldn't be much use here as he couldn't make Godfrey bleed. It was a perfect opportunity to try out the soldiers. And these little guys didn't disappoint. To make this fight a little bit easier, I decided to use Warming Stones. These will passively heal our soldiers over time, however I quickly realised that the stones were actually healing Godfrey as well. A strange mechanic I never even knew about, so we scrapped that idea for a later boss. These little fellas just surrounded Godfrey and slowly beat him to death, and all I had to do was jump in every now and then and just heal him. One of the easier fights in this run, an easy first attempt. It was now time to upgrade our healing incantations again, so we picked up the Two Fingers Prayer Book in order to get Lord's Heal, which gives us a massive boost to our healing capabilities. And we then went up and picked up Blessing of the Erd Tree, which is defo an improvement on our heal over time incantations, which now gives us 12 HP per second for 90 seconds. With that, it was on to Margit, and for this one we could summon Melina, who also grants healing, which was perfect. We were able to finally use our new summon, the Dung Eater, and he came in swinging. With both me and Melina healing him constantly, it was perfect. This wasn't even a challenge. Seeing the Dung Eater is someone who we could rely on for the rest of the run. That was until we got to the mountaintops of the giants. Wait, hold up, I'm getting ahead of myself here. We then went and killed this oversized puppy, just to get the Radahn icon. This will just help us cast spells faster. First we killed the magma worm in Mount Gelmir, and spoke with Alexander just to bring him to the fire giant with us. And finally, as soon as we got there, we tried a few tries with the Dung Eater and Alexander, but I figured there was no chance we would be able to do enough damage to him just even to get him to second phase. So it was finally time. If we run to the back of the arena and draw the giant in as far as possible, we can jump off this small ledge here. We can then set up Leyndell, who will rain fire on the giant from a distance, all while the giant is stuck on the rocks. He's not able to get to us whatsoever from here. This is a very, very long drawn out fight, and I won't bore you with the whole clip. But hey, it worked. I knew she would come in handy at some point. And with that, we were then granted access to Farum Azula. And this is where the run really started to go downhill. Our first fight was against the notorious Godskin Duo. In the majority of my previous runs, I've used some form of sleep to bypass these two, as they're an absolute nightmare to fight together. But this time, we stuck with the Dung Eater and also used the NPC summon Banal, and it worked out a whole lot better than I expected. All I had to do was to stay on top of one of these pillars and keep healing and buffing the boys. However, the first issue was that the summon started fighting the enemies that were waiting outside the boss room. The next issue was, well, this move. Despite that, they were able to deal crazy damage to both of these bosses, and once one of them finished the other, it was then 2-on-1 instead.
Well, well, well. How the turntables...
And that made this fight the easiest I have ever had it. In future, I will definitely just be using Banal every single time. Next up we had Maliketh, and when I started this run, this was the boss I was most worried for. Not only did he have crazy range and one strike could kill me in one shot, but he also has this holy attack that just melts mine and my summon's health bars like an ice cream in the sun. I tried many strategies for this one. First of all, we just tested the strengthy Dung Eater again, and he just got ruined in the second phase. My next idea was to utilise Leyndell yet again, but this time I had no way of making sure Maliketh got stuck, so I needed to draw aggro from Leyndell. So my idea was to use the Wraith Calling Bell. This would take the boss away from Leyndell and allow her to shoot Maliketh whilst I was running for my life. But unfortunately, the Wraith Bell actually does damage, so we couldn't use this. I had one last idea. Whenever I have struggled with a boss in the past, I could always rely on bleed to get me through it. So if I could create a bleed build, I could use the Mimic tier to replicate the build and just pray for bleed procs over and over to get me through. I opted for 2 curved swords, and also picked up the Crucible Tree Armor just to negate some of that holy damage coming through. But unfortunately I had the same issue of the Mimic just being wrecked in the second phase every single time. I needed to outlast Maliketh, because I just beat him in a fair fight. So of course there was only one option. The Mimic was equipped with Rotten Breath Incantation, and once Maliketh was infected, all I had to do was survive long enough until he dies. And after shitting my pants for what felt like hours, it was done. From this point onwards, it's basically a boss rush until the end, and first up was Sir Gideon. Usually I walk all over this guy in normal playthroughs, but in this playthrough, I still walked over him. All I did was just push him over to the floor like I'm taking his lunch money, and just allow the Dung Eater to get bleed procs over and over again. 2 bosses left, and for this we were able to pick up the Erd Tree heal, which is just an absolute game changer. This was pretty much heal the Mimic to full once half health. So on to Godfrey. Tried the Mimic again and hoped the bleed would carry me through. The curved sword just weren't proccing enough bleed. So I travelled to the mountaintops of the Giants to claim one of the most overpowered weapons in Elden Ring's history, the Rivers of Blood. In case you're wondering how I killed Akina to get this, check this out. With this now equipped, we upgraded it and went back to fight Godfrey. And we first tried it with the Rivers of Blood. The difference between the 2 builds was absolutely night and day. It just showed how good the Rivers of Blood still is despite all the nerfs and patches. For those wondering, this is the build I used for this fight. Now it was on to Radahn, and I never even thought I'd get this far honestly in this run. For this one we couldn't use bleed in this fight, as both are immune to it. I had a very special idea for the final boss. We went and killed the Godskin Apostle in order to get us the God Slayer's Greatsword. This sword skill would just tear through both Radahn and the Beast as they were weak to fire damage. We also picked up Divine Fortification just to give us a significant boost to our holy damage negation. First phase just went extremely easy, with us not even breaking a sweat. The second phase is always going to be the most boring fight with the beach just running away like a bitch every time, but I'll just let the gameplay play out. And that was that. We actually got him. We actually did it. If any of you are wondering what happened to Rennala, I wasn't even interested in trying that fight with summons alone, because it would have been an absolute nightmare. But we did go back and get her eventually, and yes, I used the pot method. I never knew you could even skip her completely and still complete the game. I honestly never thought I'd be able to complete this run. I'm not your pro Elden Ring player. I'm an average player who simply enjoys playing the game for what it is. The fact that you can beat this game in so many different ways is just one of the many reasons why this game is so special to me. I would love to give another one of these a go, so if you enjoyed this video, let me know what other runs you'd like to see. Catch you in the next one, fellas.